Hey everybody, what we're talking about today is do-it-yourself foreclosure and bankster thieves. And so I'm hoping that I can help some people here, and we'll talk about it. Over the last few years, interest rates have been driven to the point that real interest rates are negative. And over the last 30 years, interest rates have gone down to the point that they can go down no more. And this same thing happened prior to the Great Depression in the 1930s. I'm not saying that the events we will discuss will happen. I'm saying that it behooves us to be prepared in case they do, and to understand what's happening and to have a plan of action. Before, in the Great Depression, before interest rates started to climb, debt was money, and that's the way it is now, although that's changing. When interest rates started to climb, debt became a liability and real assets became money. And in case anybody's noticed, recently the Federal Reserve has said that they're going to stop this quantitative easing, which, if you understand what quantitative easing was, is that basically the Federal Reserve was buying bonds. And if you understand how bonds work, when the price goes up, the yield goes down. Okay, so when the Federal Reserve is buying bonds, they're bidding on with everybody else on bonds. And so then the price is going up. And because of that, the yield goes down, the interest rate. And the yield is the interest rate. And but recently, the Federal Reserve has said they're going to stop doing quantitative easing, more or less because they have to. And the end result is they quit bidding on bonds. And so because of that, interest rates have started to climb. And when in the 30s, when interest rates started to climb, debt became a liability and real assets became money. If you think about it, if you have a 30-year bond that's at, a 0.5% interest, and the government issues another bond that's at 2% interest, then well, first of all, the one that's at 0.5% interest, when you take into account real inflation, you're losing money. Okay, you're going in the hole. And then when another bond comes out with a higher rate of interest, or people even bid up the price, I should say, when people quit bidding on the price, and the interest rate starts to climb, you're stuck with this bond that is at a low interest rate, and nobody wants it. And so then when interest rates start to climb, debt becomes a liability and real assets become money. And in the 30s, the banks began to fail. Deflation happened, while at the same time inflation happened in certain sectors. The money supply dried up. And there's a guy by the name of Cliff High who has some videos on YouTube. I'm not sure if he has a YouTube channel. He might. But I would highly recommend you listen to what he's got to say, because he is saying he has a web bot program that basically goes out and collects data from the internet, and he is saying that we are on the verge of major problems, and I think he's right. But again, we all have to be responsible for our own actions, and we all have to it would behoove us to make preparations for this, but I wouldn't sell the farm based on it. Just need to be aware and be watching. And if it starts to come to pass, then you can have some plan of attack in place on what you can do. And one thing I'd be doing is buying gold or silver. And actually, he says Bitcoin too. Bitcoin's going to do fine during this. Anyways, in order to avoid failure in the 30s, the banks accelerated all loans and foreclosed. Okay, now you have to understand that all bank loans have an acceleration clause. All these mortgages have an acceleration clause. The bank can foreclose. The bank can call out loan anytime they feel like it. And that's what happened in the 30s, is they just called them all. And they make the entire balance due immediately. So anybody that's got a mortgage, it doesn't matter if you were late in your payments, they'll call it due anyways. people who were not behind in their payments were foreclosed upon and lost their property. And so what Cliff is saying is that that's going to happen, and it's going to happen really soon. It's going to start happening in the new year, early in the new year. Anyways, so the purpose of this video is to make you aware of the steps a bank has to complete in a foreclosure, and some alternatives and some ways to defeat the foreclosure process. I can say that I have some knowledge of this because the Bankster stole my home in the mid-2000s. Okay, so I know exactly what they did. And actually, I tied them up pretty good, given my level of knowledge at the time. But again, it comes down to corruption in local officials. And so there's a lot of variables. But I can tell you that I have been to, there are people that sell note seminars where you can, there's a whole industry where you can buy notes from Wall Street, and there's literally millions of foreclosed homes out there that the banks, actually they're not foreclosed, they're notes that are non-performing notes is what they're called. And in other words, the people aren't making the payments, and the people are still in the houses. And there's a whole industry of investors that buy these things and try and get the notes performing. And so, again, if you, this is some ideas on what you can do, because it is, according to Cliff, it's going to be really ugly, and I think there's a good possibility that that exactly might happen. So it behooves us all to be ready. Most of the information in this video involves non-judicial foreclosure proceedings. That's what I went through. But some of it can also be used with judicial foreclosures as well. So, as a preemptive measure, it's a good idea to bring forward all the rights and privileges of the original land patent. You can hurt them in a major way, okay? There's a friend of mine in Texas that I helped him do that, and he subsequently died. And his family wound up with this property that we brought forward the land patent, and he wasn't paying property taxes. And so this was in Tarrant County, so the Tarrant County thieves went ahead and foreclosed and sold the property, and their neighbor bought the property at the auction. And the interesting thing is, actually, it wasn't an auction. There was some sort of settlement or something, because they actually got market value for the property. But and the Tarrant County thieves got their theft. But the interesting thing is I had helped him bring forward the land patent. The family, they didn't care less. They were totally clueless about it, didn't care. And so they went ahead and sold the property to the neighbor. The neighbor happened to be the mayor. And a friend of mine happened to be talking to the mayor one day, and the mayor told him how that land patent had made it so the banks wouldn't loan money on it, okay? And that's the power of a land patent, okay? And I've had people tell me that title insurance companies, when they bring forward the land patent, they go and show the title insurance company, and the title insurance company tells them, you'll never get title insurance on that land. And that's exactly what you want. You don't need title insurance if you have the land patent. You have absolute title. Anyways, so what happened was that this mayor could not get a mortgage. He had to get a friend to loan him the money to buy the house. And so that's the power of the land patent. Okay, so again, watch the do-it-yourself, no property taxes video, or the upcoming, I'm going to publish another video that's actually quite similar, but it's got a little bit of extra information, the do-it-yourself land patents video. So watch those and bring forward all the rights and privileges of your original land patent. That is very powerful, and you can hurt them. Normally, the banks can accelerate the mortgage in the event of a transfer. In other words, if you sell it, see, when I buy property, I don't buy anything that I have to have a mortgage on. If you've got a mortgage on it, the land patent's going to trump the mortgage. Okay, and if you read the court cases and understand what's going on, the land patent trumps any equitable interest in the property, and so then that's why they won't give you a mortgage, because they won't be able to take the property. But so if you bring forward the land patent, you'll have absolute title to the land, but they can still have a lien against the house, but they better not trespass. If you get what I mean. Anyways, so if you, when I buy land, I buy it under a structure, you know, a company or a trust or something like that, and then I transfer the land from the trust or the company to me, because most of these people don't have a clue about the wording on these deeds, and I have particular wording that I like to use that bring forwards the land patent. And so when I buy land that's free and clear. I don't deal with the Bankster thieves. After they stole my house, I'll never deal with them again. Matter of fact, actually I do. I've had credit cards, and I've matter of fact, I'll talk about it here, where I actually used accepted for value and discharged $45,000 with a credit card debt. So you know, again, it's a little bit of what goes around comes around. Anyways, so if you transfer, you can transfer under the Garn-St. Germain Act, you can transfer your land to a trust, and there's nothing they can do about it. And so that would be what I would suggest you do. But you got to do it the right kind of trust. You have to be careful about that. But anyways, yes, you can transfer it to a trust, and there's nothing they can do if it's got a mortgage on it, and they can't accelerate the mortgage. Now, that's not going to stop them from accelerating the mortgage just because they feel like it when they're getting into tough times and all that. But at least they won't be able to accelerate it because of the transfer. So the first thing I would suggest you do is do a Google search to see if your state is a judicial foreclosure or non-judicial foreclosure state. My home was in Arizona, and at the time it was a non-judicial foreclosure state. I don't know what it is now. I haven't done the research. I suspect it's probably the same, but you know, again, I stirred up a lot of ruckus over that, so they might have changed it too. A judicial foreclosure state requires the banksters to file a lawsuit to foreclose. Okay, so you got to check your state statutes to see what's required to foreclose. The minimum time to foreclose is 90 days. Some states take 120 up to 180 days. Okay, so every state's going to be different. You need to check your statutes. If the banksters file a lawsuit first, then what you do is you file a counterclaim and bring up all the issues that we're going to talk about in this proceeding for the non-judicial foreclosure section of this video. No matter what, you can always file a notice of void judgment into the case. See the void judgments video. Okay, they're always under a statute, and anytime it's under a statute, the judge is a clerk masquerading as a judge. All these judges are Roman cult Satanist Baal priests, so there's all sorts of reasons why you can do that. Depends on how much in their face you want to be. I'm kind of an in your face sort of guy. So step one, the first step in any foreclosure is a demand letter. Okay, so they're going to send you a demand letter from some liars and demanding the entire balance due immediately. You'll probably have 30 days to tender payment before they send you another demand letter. Usually they usually have to send you 3 at least, so 30 days apart, so that gives you the 90 days. And then they get another 30 days they'll send you a notice that the auction's going to happen. Anyways, in a non-disclosure, if you're making payments, if that happens, if you get a demand letter and you're making payments, well, I would stop. Okay, they're going to steal everything, or they're going to try. And whether you make payments or not is completely immaterial at this point. In a worst case scenario, you'll need the money to get relocated, and you'll probably be able to save close to a year's worth of mortgage payments. So you can turn that to your advantage. Keep as little as possible in the bank. The Bankster thieves are going to do a Cyprus, I guarantee you. And it started, I mean, you know, they say, this is one thing that Cliff High says, is that, and he's 100% right, is that all empires start to collapse from the periphery. and Argentina was the periphery. Venezuela was the periphery. Greece was the periphery. Cyprus was the periphery. The next thing you know, it's going to be in Alabama, Texas, and California. And so, again, it's coming. I guarantee you it's coming. Again, you have to do what's right for you. I'm not saying whether you should or should not do anything, but, you know, it's coming. There are two kinds of title to real property. Legal title, okay, you have legal title. The properties in your name are actually your Satanic Trust name, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And equitable title. Equitable title is you have it, but so does the bank. Okay, that's why when you sell your house, a lot of people say they took their equity. Okay, that's because you have an equitable interest in the house. Because of the mortgage, if there's any court action, it will always be in a court of equity. And that's very important because of what we're going to talk about. Under equity, there's a thing called the clean hands doctrine. Okay, the principle that a party cannot seek equitable relief or assert an equitable defense if that party has violated an equitable principle, such as good faith. Okay, such a party is described as having unclean hands. Okay, in other words, if you're late on your payments, when the banks foreclose, people wonder why the banks foreclose on a property, why they're late in their payments, and the banks foreclose, and the judge just completely ignores everything they say, and the banksters get the house. Okay, and the reason is because they were late on their payments. They had unclean hands. That's breach of contract. And so now, if the people were smart, they could have easily brought up the fact that there was fraud, okay, on the part of the bank from the beginning, and explained why they were late on the payments because of all the fraud. Fraud obvioates the most solemn promise to pay. And so if the people were smart, they could have done that and probably kept their house. Okay, and so you understand where I'm going with this? You understand what you have to do when you go into these courts of equity? Okay, are you getting the picture? The clean hands doctrine evolved from the discretionary nature of equitable relief in English courts of equity, such as Chancery, and that's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. So it's very important to understand this clean hands doctrine. Satanic Trust. This is the DC Code. And in chapter 56 at section 1617 at 31 stat 1432, it says the legal estate to be in the Satanic use. Okay, well, a Satanic use is a Satanic trust. And you understand, that's why they spell your name in all block capital letters, because that is a Satanic trust. Okay, it's not in your name, it's in the name of that trust. And you're going to see here in a minute, it's right in their own stuff. Okay, this is Congressional Record, June 13th, 1967, page 15641 through 15646. Quote, a citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the Public Charitable Trust, the Constructive Satanic Trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc. Okay? Now, that is covering 5 pages of Congressional Record. If you know anything or have ever looked at the Congressional Record, that is a lot of stuff. That's obviously a summary of those 5 pages. Every taxpayer is a Satanic trust having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. Okay, so every taxpayer is a Satanic trust. That means every U.S. citizen is a Satanic trust. Okay, and when you fill out a mortgage application, think about it. You either state under penalty of perjury that you're a U.S. citizen or a resident alien. Okay, it says right on the application. These banksters know exactly what they're doing. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. Okay, and the definition of mort main covers like about 5 pages. But, and it's really small print, so this is only a small part of that definition. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. For when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance, by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs, to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief. Okay, in other words, the season is the title, and the possession was the real people, okay, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, still under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to account to his sestike use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. And you could consider rents and emoluments as property taxes. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. So think about it here. First of all, what it says is the sestike use was created by the Roman cult. It says that our practitioners are indebted to the introduction of use and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing in 1835. Do you think anything's changed? Absolutely not. And it also talks about the courts of equity under the direction of the clergy. Okay, they still are. All courts are bail priests. Okay, and so they're talking about the property tax. Okay. And so the sestike trust was the foundation of modern conveyancing in 1835, and it still is today. The sestike trust was created by the Roman cult. The sestike trust is a fraud. The courts of equity are under control of the Roman cult. Taxes are a tribute paid to the Roman cult for the rents and emoluments of the sestike trust. And where's the disclosure of all this? Okay. And no disclosure equals fraud. And get a load of this. This is in the DC Code again. We'll go back to the DC Code. The legal estate to be in the sestike use. Think about it. If the sestike use was created by the Roman cult, and they're putting it in the DC Code that all legal estates to be in the sestike use, they're saying that DC, that United States, is owned and operated by the Roman cult. That's exactly what they're saying. Because then the Roman cult owns everything. And then they get to collect their tribute. Once a fraud, always a fraud. Things invalid from the beginning cannot be made valid by some subsequent act. A thing void in the beginning does not become valid by lapse of time. Time cannot render a valid an act void in its origin. These are all maxims of law. Out of fraud, no action arises, and any act by any government official to conceal a fraud becomes an act of fraud. It is a fraud to conceal a fraud, and fraud is inexcusable and unpardonable. Fraud and deceit should excuse no man. These are all maxims of law. And any fraud amounts to injustice. Fraud and justice never dwell together. What is otherwise good and justice sought by force or fraud becomes bad and unjust. Okay, so this is all maxims of law. Fraud is an intentional perversion of truth for the purpose of inducing another into reliance into it, to part with some valuable thing belonging to him, or to surrender a legal right. Gee, that sounds like a sestike trust. When one conveys a false impression by disclosure of some facts and the concealment of others, such concealment is in effect a false representation that what is disclosed is the whole truth. Suppression of a material fact which a party is bound in good faith to disclose is equivalent to a false representation. Fraud and deceit may arise from silence where there is a duty to speak, as well as from a speaking an untruth. Fraud may be committed by a failure to speak when the duty of speaking is imposed, as much as by speaking falsely. Okay, so this is all fraud. Where a relation of trust or confidence exists between two parties so that one places particular reliance and trustworthiness of another, the latter is under duty to make full and truthful disclosure of all material facts and is liable for misrepresentation or concealment. Concealing a material fact when there's a duty to disclose may be actionable fraud. So, the best way to defeat any foreclosure is to show that the bank acted in bad faith. Unclean hands. Okay? All mortgages are full of fraud. They're completely fraudulent. They loan nothing. See the No Such Thing as a Bank Loan video. Okay? Mortgages are full of other fraud as well. besides what's just listed in that no such thing as a bank loan video. The best way is to file a lawsuit against the bank before they file a lawsuit against you based on newly discovered information. Okay, and why do you call it newly discovered information? Because of laches. Laches is unreasonable delay in pursuing a right of claim, almost always an equitable one, in a way that prejudices the party against whom relief is sought. It's also termed sleeping on rights. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. So these bankster thieves want to get away with their theft, okay? And so if you start claiming all this fraud and you don't claim that it's just newly discovered, then they're going to say, well, you were sleeping your rights, okay? Matter of fact, they won't actually come out and say that, okay? These liars are slick, okay? They'll say, well, you know, this loan has been in place for 15 years, okay? And now they're bringing this up. Well, think about it. They're talking about laches, okay? Most states have statutes that allow 2 years from the date of injury or from discovery of the injury, okay? And so, again, you want to make sure that you say this is newly discovered information. So that's one response, is file a lawsuit. Another response is accepted for value. And there's a dissolve your debt manual in the Yahoo group files directory. I've used it. The Social Security number is an account number for the Sesta K Trust. Okay, you're essentially saying that we all know there's no money, so I'm accepting this for value. Okay, that's what A4V stands for. You're saying that there's no money. We all know there's no money, but I'm accepting this for value. And you're giving them permission to take the money from the Sesta K Trust account. Okay, there's a lot of money in that account. I want nothing to do with it because it's a badge of slavery. Okay, because you got a demand letter from liars, and the liars are officers of the court. It's more likely to work when dealing than dealing with the banksters directly. The banksters, when dealing directly with banksters, and you do A for V. They sometimes steal the money and send you another bill. Okay, they're thieves. Okay, they are flat out thieves. And but if you lay the foundation properly with the liars, you put them in a very difficult position. and so like for example, and if somebody wants to send me, I can send them, you know, this. But there was a loan that I had. And I do contract work, so sometimes I'm out of work. And like I've been out of work for 4 years this time. Anyways, so I was out of work, and there was this loan for $29,000. And the bank sent me a demand letter. And I sent them back a letter saying, sure. They said basically that you pay this money now or we're going to sue you. Okay? So my letter said, sure, you can go ahead and sue me, but I intend to prove in court that you didn't loan me anything. And I intend to ask an officer of the bank and a CPA on the stand these 160 questions that are provided by Tom Schaff in his book Banker's Secrets, and prove that you didn't loan me anything. And oh, by the way, if you actually did loan me a depositor's money, which is, by the way, a felony, then I will reconsider my position, and please have an officer of the bank sign this affidavit saying they actually did loan me a depositor's money, and I'll reconsider my position. And I served that on them by registered mail on the liars. Okay, and then what happens is in 90 days, I get a statement on that account showing it's been paid off. It's a magical thing. And so the reason is because they're liars. Okay, and when I serve it on them by registered mail, and I offer to settle it if they can prove that they actually did loan me some money. Of course they didn't. And it puts them in, because they're officers of the court, if they go ahead and sue me and that comes out in court, they'll get disbarred. Okay, because they'll be viewed as abusing the system. Okay, so that's why you want the liars to be in on it, because the liars will be, you can hurt them. Okay, and so when you do it in the right way, you got to serve it on them by registered mail. You got to do it all in the right way, and so that you can prove it. Okay, that's the bottom line. You got to have proof, and when you can do that, then things will happen. But it's only when you're dealing with the liars, okay? Otherwise, you're dealing with the banksters. Matter of fact, 9 times out of 10, you don't even know who you're dealing with in the bank. They can claim stupidity, and they'll just steal it, and they'll claim stupidity. They'll claim ignorance. Anyways, I've used A for V for unsecured credit cards, alleged debt of approximately $45,000. I've also used A for V for IRS alleged debt. And A for V can be used with any alleged taxes, any bankster alleged debt, any utilities. A for V is used for the Satanic Trust alleged debt and allows it to be paid from the trust's account with the Treasury. Since I do not have a Social Security number, I do not need to use it very often. And I stay away from it, okay? Quite frankly, I only use it as a last resort. But it does work if you do it properly. And so I would recommend you check out that Dissolve Your Debt manual. They're making it, you know, again, they're thieves, okay? And so why would you expect thieves to be anything but thieves? So I guess what my point is that, you know, sometimes it's kind of subtle. Sometimes they don't just come out and say, like sometimes if they're honorable, they send you another bill saying that it's been paid, okay? But many of them are not honorable. Many of them are thieves. And so then you have to be able to defend it. But the interesting thing, like when I discharged the $45,000, what happened is they kept sending me bills. But I sent them a letter. I sent them a 4-page letter, and it basically went through and explained that they had securitized the debt, that there was no money, that Federal Reserve notes are bills of credit, and it's United States credit. And one of the things I said is, so go collect it from the United States. It's United States credit, it's United States debt. And then I went and said, I said other things like, that I talked about Tom Schaaf's book and about the 120 questions, Banker's Secrets, and about how they didn't loan me anything. And so then I finally wound it all up, and I said that if you can do 2 things. I said you can either A, you can discharge this debt, and I'll run it back up, and we can both make some money because I'll discharge it 2 or 3 times, and so that you can get 200 or 300% on your money, or you can just close the account. And I said, I don't want to hear from any of your lying, thieving, murdering bar members. And if I hear another word of this, I'm going to sue you for racketeering, theft, extortion. And I just listed them. And then I said, furthermore, if you have any doubt about my ability to file a lawsuit, go look at the U.S. Supreme Court. You'll see I've been there 4 times. And so I know what to do. And so, anyways, so they kept harassing me a little bit, but it's interesting that it never showed up negative. Oh, that's one thing I told them. I said it better not show up any negative on the credit report, or I'll sue you. And it never did show up negative on the credit report. They just sent me harassing letters. And anyway, so again, if you understand the law and know how to assert your rights, you could be successful. A for V, let's see. Yeah, okay, we covered all of that. So if you do not respond, okay, for step 1, then they'll keep sending demand letters, 60 days or 90 days up to 180 days. They'll go through their process. And after the demand letters are done, they'll give 30 days notice of public auction. And after the public auction, they'll give you another 30 days, and then they'll start with an unlawful detainer action. And which that could take another 90 days, and that's basically for renters and to kick you out of the house. Okay, so again, there's things that you can do after they've done the auction, and then the unlawful detainer action. So the unlawful detainer response is serve all the local judges with a notice and demand that puts them into estoppel. They cannot claim stupidity or ignorance. Serve the local police chief, the county sheriff, the local constable, the local city marshal, anybody else that may be involved in evicting you. Okay? And again, in order to evict you, they got to come to your house and move your stuff out onto the street. Okay? And so make them perjure their oaths by coming to your home and physically removing your property. And it's a good idea to have a backup storage unit or other place to put your possessions. But you know, how well this work will depend on how corrupt your local officials are, and they may never come. And if they do come, file a criminal complaint against them, and you can also file a lawsuit against them, but you know, you're going to be going into their kangaroo courts. So again, you have to lay a foundation. And but I can tell you that there's thousands, if not millions, of people in America where they have not come, okay? And they're living in their house, they're not making mortgage payments, and they're getting by just fine. If the unlawful detainer action court rules against you, file a notice of void judgment into the case. See the void judgments video. It is never over until you say it's over. There are people in homes in America in which mortgage payments have been made, in which no mortgage payments have been made for many years. There are. I've gone to these note seminars, and they talk about it in there, where there's lots of people that you know, where you're doing the buying the non-performing notes. Okay, there's lots of people doing these non-performing note seminars. Okay, anyways, so the whole Bankster crisis is set up to orchestrate World War III as part of a blood sacrifice to the Roman cult god. I believe, can't prove it yet, but I believe that for every person killed in a war, a portion of the national debt is eliminated. I think the Roman cult pays them. Okay, the whole financial system is based on Roman law. Okay, I can prove that. That's easy to prove. Part of this process is putting people out of their homes to create business for their bail priest bar members through the foreclosures, the divorces, the juvenile delinquency, and the prison industry. Okay, it's all part of business as usual for these Satanists. Okay, and this is Revelation 17, 1-2. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Okay? Well, I believe that the wine of her fornication referred to here is the IOUs. Okay? The banknotes, the debt that circulates for money. Everybody thinks they're getting rich. Woohoo! We're getting rich! The fornication is the corporations that have been set up masquerading as governments, which are illegitimate governments, and are fraud, and they put them into bankruptcy to facilitate their seizure by the great whore, which is the Roman cult that sells forgiveness of sins for money and operates under the law of the sea, which is unidroit. And so I think that this is talking about right now, what's happening right now, and you know, that's my opinion. The end justifies the means is satanic. Woe unto them that call good evil and evil good, and put darkness for light and light for darkness. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren or the children of Israel, make merchandise of him or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. Well, there is a lot of evil happening in our world today, and they make merchandise of people every day and use it to populate their prisons. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. Give me liberty or give me death is a phrase coined by Patrick Henry after he witnessed a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. By which he also went and preached to the spirits in prison, spirit prisons, hell. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth, and they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in prison, and after many days shall they be visited. It behooves every man who values liberty of conscience for himself to resist invasions of it in the case of others, or their case may, by change of circumstance, become his own. Thomas Jefferson. So I'm offering some things, some advice, or some, not advice, some ideas because of things that happened to me and how you can prevent it from happening to you. If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may our posterity forget that you are ever our countrymen. And nobody could say it better than Samuel Adams. When shall it be said in any country of the world, my poor are happy, neither ignorance or distress is to be found among them. My jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars, the aged are not in want. The tax is not oppressive, the rational world is my friend, because I am friend of its happiness. When these things can be said, then may that country boast of its constitution and government. Well, we have nothing to boast of here. We have a bunch of criminals that have seized control of the government. Fortunately, we have a new president, and I think that things are going to change for the good, but that's yet to be seen. And but meanwhile, we have Satanists running around populating the prisons. We have the streets are full of beggars. The taxes are oppressive. And that's all these communists that have been in power. Obama and his communist gang, okay? And all these brain-dead idiot sheeple out there. But if the watchmen see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take any person among them, he is taken in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hands. This is my effort to make sure that I'm blameless on Judgment Day. Either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. I hope you're blameless on Judgment Day as well. You are now a watchman. Circulate this video far and wide. Other videos, I've got over 230 other videos. Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3. Churchianity series. Bankrupt corporate so-called governments. Bar members 1, 2, and 3. How not to do it yourself. How not to volunteer for the selective service. Martial laws here. Do it yourself, no income tax. Do it yourself, no sales tax. Do it yourself, traffic stop. Do it yourself, free mail. Do it yourself, kangaroo courts. 1, 2, and 3 for that one. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for donation. And this last paragraph is for the Satanist order follower revenue officers that think that I'm getting some privilege or benefit. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin. But as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept IOUs, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal gifts, checks, money orders. Send me an email for particulars. For all those Satanist order followers, you can take your privileges and benefits and put them up your rectal orifice. If you find this useful, then you need to pay it forward. If you don't know what pay it forward means, then watch the movie. And please send me success stories. Okay, I know there's people having success stories out there. And so please send them to me and I'll put them in my blog. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page was deleted because of censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group, Sovereignty International, is being deleted. Watch my video about how to hurt Facebook. My Yahoo private group is Administrating Your Public Servants, and my Google private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. Anyways, I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. I hope you get something out of it. I hope you keep your home, you know. Get rid of these banksters. We got the Federal Reserve, according to Cliff High, the Federal Reserve is in its last days, and it is going to be gone very soon. You know, it might be a couple years yet, but it'll be gone. And we will eliminate this plague from our nation, and the sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned. These bankster thieves, matter of fact, we need to hang some of them. That's what I would like to see, and so maybe we'll get to see that. That would be good. Anyways, thanks for watching, and have a real good day.